Welcome to this course on Introduction to Kubernetes using Docker. We'll be using the Google Cloud Platform, and I'll demonstrate within this course everything that you need to know about what Kubernetes is and how do we use Docker and how does it work and relate to the Kubernetes and the Google Cloud Platform. My name is Syed and I'll be the instructor for this course. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin back in 1995 with a BBA in finance. And then of course I continued my journey of education and obtained my MBA, LLB, DBL degrees, as well as a PhD in management sciences. I'm also a certified Microsoft system engineer, certified trainer, and a networking professional as well. I've been in the training industry for a little over 20 years, and I specialize in making complex material real easy to follow and understand. Let me next walk you through the detailed course agenda as to what we'll be covering within this course. So here's Module 1, Course Introduction. 2 lessons. I'm going to talk about first the structure of the course. This is where we will take a look at the actual architecture of the course. In other words, I'll show you how to actually go about creating your virtual machines, cluster, pods, and the entire infrastructure, and I'll walk you through each of those lessons in hands-on exercises. And lesson 2, of course, is the detailed course agenda. Here's Module 2, getting started with the fundamentals. There are about 10 lessons in this module. We'll start off by talking about the evolution of applications, how we used to develop software, and how is it developed now, and where is the industry heading towards. Lesson 2 is the world of microservices. This is where we'll take a look at how the microservices framework helps develop applications. And lesson 2A is introduction to the Google Cloud Console and how to create a free Google Cloud account. Since we'll be using the cloud platform throughout this course, that's why I put these 2 lessons together, so you get an idea of how to go about creating an account and get comfortable with the interface of the Google Cloud Platform. In lesson 3, I'll talk about what a container is, how does it work, how does it fit into the world of microservices. And lesson 4 is all about Docker. I'm going to introduce what the Docker technology and how containers and images work within Docker. Lesson 5 is installing a virtual box. This is where I'll demonstrate how to install or create, in fact, an Oracle virtual machine. We may or may not use this in the course, but I think it's a very helpful lesson for you to know how to set up a virtual box so that when you're working with some of these technologies, it will help you long ways. Lesson 6 is installing Docker. And lesson 7 is working with the online Docker Hub account and taking a look at various repositories. Lesson 8 is I'll introduce briefly what is Kubernetes. How does it fit into the big picture? And lesson 9 is working with the Google Cloud Shell. The Cloud Shell is something that we'll be using all along this course. In almost every lesson, I'll demonstrate using the Cloud Shell. And lesson 10 is working with the Google Container Engine. This is where we'll in fact create our clusters and work with our registry. So module 2 is all about getting to know the fundamentals of not only just the Google Cloud Platform, but also Docker, virtual machines, and online Docker Hub account as well. Then in Module 3, moving forward, we will take a look at Docker technology and Kubernetes. How do they interact? How do they work together? So 5 lessons in this module. We'll first dive deep into the Kubernetes architecture. It's important to understand how Kubernetes work. It's a hosted platform within the Google Container Engine. So we'll take a look at different elements of Kubernetes itself. So you'll have a solid understanding of the concepts of Kubernetes, and I'll demonstrate, of course, those concepts and apply them as well. Lesson 2 is installing apps with native OS tools. Lesson 3 is running images with Docker. And lesson 4 is connecting to Docker Hub, which is again our online repository. Lesson 5 is Docker build, how to create images. So this is something that we'll get into more hands-on into the flavor of Docker and Kubernetes as well at this time. All right, lesson 4 is creating clusters and virtual machines with Kubernetes or using Kubernetes. And here is where our project begins. So I'm going to try to create this a project-based course. So in this project, I have about 6 lessons. And lesson 1 is Kubernetes Revisited. We'll take a look at some of the important concepts one more time, just very briefly. Lesson 2 is creating a new project. So we'll begin our new project, and I'll demonstrate how to use the Google Cloud Platform to create a new project. Lesson 3 is creating a cluster. So we'll set up nodes. Lesson 4 is the Kubernetes user interface, talking to a cluster. So we'll take a look at how and what Kubernetes look like, the actual Kubernetes dashboard, and various features and functionality. Lesson 5 is deploying your app to clusters. So we'll take a look at how to deploy the WordPress onto a cluster and then in fact create a website out of it. Okay, so this is the project, and we'll also take a look at how Kubernetes handle the backend nodes and work with different containers. So lesson 6 is pushing images to the container registry. So module 4 is all about working with the project, and I call this WordPress because in this project 6 lessons will in fact create a WordPress site using the Google Cloud Platform, Kubernetes, and Docker. Module 5 is getting more in depth into Kubernetes. So here again, I'm going to work with a project, a different project, a little bit more complex project. 9 lessons in this project, and this project is about creating a PHP based guest book. And first lesson is creating a cluster for our multi-tier web app. Lesson 2 is deploying the master node. Lesson 3 is deploying the master service for the node. And lesson 4 and 5 again is creating and deploying the slave controllers and the service for the slave controller as well. Lesson 6 is creating and deploying the front-end node, and this front-end will be accessed by users coming to our site. And again, the site is developed in PHP. Lesson 7 is configuring external IP addresses so that once you have the cluster created and the front end created, we need to configure the IP addresses and make sure the front end has the IP address on port 80, for example, so that the public can access it. And lesson 8 is project cleanup. In other words, we'll tear down the project. And lesson 9 is project summary. So we'll recap all of the important concepts of Kubernetes within this project. So 2 important projects that essentially we'll be doing, and we'll dive deep into the Kubernetes and take a look at everything that you need to know about Kubernetes. And finally, course conclusion is module 6. I'm just going to recap some of the learning concepts and reinforce some of the learning concepts so far that we've learned within this course. So I'm super excited to have you in this course. Let's get started and let's move to our first lesson.